Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that session. Quite an insightful one. A few insights that I took away was that single family offices invest both in funds as well as in direct investments. Increasingly, they want to do more direct investments. There is that FOMO of missing out from these new age investments, but also it's a risk management measure in terms of um, fearing digital disruption in their main businesses and therefore wanting to invest in new age businesses. One provocative statement that I did notice was Keshav Reddy saying something about sort of as a family office being able to do 40 to 50% better than venture capital funds. That was an interesting one. I'm sure he will get questions later on. Certainly, I will have some for him. But we now are going to end the family office session and going to switch gears. And we are now expecting the Honorable Minister for Commerce and Industry, Piyush Goyal. He is going to be a few minutes later than what we expected. So may I suggest now that would be a good time to take a quick break, get a cup of tea or coffee, and be back in 5 minutes. We are back, except not quite. The next session is going to be a few minutes. No. Again. Okay, we are back, but not quite. The next session will take a few more minutes. We are sorry for that. But in the meantime, we are going to replay a video from yesterday. Renuka Ramnath, the chairperson of IBCA, made a keynote presentation yesterday. We're going to play that. We will interrupt it as soon as we hear and are able to start the next live session. So here's the replay from yesterday.
Hello, and a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you across time zones. I'm Sushma Kaushik, a partner at Avishkar Capital, and I feel deeply honored to be welcoming you all to the 11th edition of the IVCA Conclave. Established for over a decade by industry professionals with a unified aim to drive forward alternate capital industry in India, the IVCA, or the Indian Venture and Alternate Capital Association, is India's apex body representing the interests of all key stakeholders, including PEVC industry, LPs, family offices, and corporate VCs. IBCA is a not for profit organization powered by its members. The member firm comprise of firms from around the world, including investment managers, investment advisors, GPs, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, national governments, large government entities, bilateral and multilateral financial institutions, HNIs, and family offices. Over these years, the association has played a pivotal role in enhancing collaboration among alternative investment players in the country, attracting capital to the Indian markets, and nurturing an ecosystem of growth and innovation. The IBCA Conclave, their annual flagship event, is now in its 11th year. Focused on private equity and VC investments in India, this exclusive event is designed to be an ideal environment for exchange of ideas, exploring business opportunities, securing long-term source of capital, and high-end networking among all players in the ecosystem. Over the next 3 days, the IBCA Conclave is going to have over 500 attendees listening to 100 odd leaders from 10 countries on topics ranging from LP allocation, GP strategy, themes like diversity, climate, and ESG. So do stay tuned in. Today, we're also going to witness the launch of some very insightful reports. First is the launch of the India Trend Book 2020 by EY, which provides a detailed overview of the phenomenal PEVC investments that we have seen in the last year and also the kind of exit activities and the key trends that underlie therein. We also have PwC presenting the findings of this year's CEO survey. The survey shares insights on how India's CEOs are thinking vis-a-vis global counterparts on 4 key parameters of growth, risk, decarbonization, and strategy. So do join in for these sessions as well. It also makes me very happy to note that today is International Women's Day, and I would love to take this opportunity to share a quote by W.E.B. Du Bois, an American sociologist, who said, "There is no force equal to a woman determined to rise." Women have been at the forefront of economic development in the country, and there is rarely a glass ceiling that now hasn't been broken. To start us off, I would like to welcome one such woman, Mrs. Renuka Ramnath, who has made today's event and the coming together of this entire community possible. Renuka is the chairperson of IBCA and the MD and CEO of Multiples Alternate in Asset Management. I've had the opportunity of working alongside Ms. Renuka Ramnath at various committees and have seen her play an instrumental role in bringing IBCA to the forefront. Renuka has over 30 years of experience and has seen the life cycle of PE in India. She's also passionate about creating domestic pools of capital for our own industry's growth. Renuka, over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Sushma, for such a generous introduction. Very grateful. Very good afternoon to everyone. A very warm welcome to this 3-day event of our association. Indeed, the last 2 years that this committee has worked in this association has been a very eventful one. And we are very happy with the progress that we have made in the last 2 years. And I'll talk about all the initiatives that this association has taken. And we are also excited to now hand over the baton to the new committee, which has got elected through the recent elections, which I will present the outcome at the end of my presentation. Indeed, all the women in this industry today will be very proud that we are having this conference on the International Women's Day. And we'll also talk about some of the diversity initiatives that this association and all its members have committed themselves to. Sushma talked about all the topics that we are going to be discussing in the next 3 days and requested all the participants to stay tuned in. So I would leave the left side of the slide, to be just read by the audience. I would only highlight that this industry has seen phenomenal participation from family offices and corporate venture capitalists to support emerging entrepreneurs. And we believe that this is a defining moment for the industry, where a huge domestic capital, along with the knowledge that these family offices bring, the entrepreneurs behind these family offices bring, to give the new next generation of entrepreneurs. And this would make a very big difference to the ecosystem of entrepreneurship in India. I would like to especially mention a very big thank you on behalf of all members of IBCA to our Honorable Minister of Commerce and Industry, Shri Piyush Goyal, Secretary, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Shri Anurag Jain, Chairman, DCC and Secretary, Department of Telecommunications, Mr. K. Rajaraman, Additional Secretary, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Shri Anil Agarwalji, Chairman, Managing Director, SIDBI, Mr. S. Raman, and Chairperson, Parliamentary Standing Committee for Finance, Shri Jain Sinha, to be speaking at this event. Go to the next slide, please. I'm very pleased to share with all of you that we have had 57 new member additions in between 21 and 22, which is the highest that this industry has witnessed so far. But I think that this funnel is going to keep expanding as we think about the potential of the opportunity for this industry in the $5 trillion economy that we are building towards. I think this industry is going to witness many newcomers, and we wholeheartedly welcome them into the industry, and we look forward to enrolling them as members in IBCA. We currently have 189 members, 17 of them, and 17 LPs and family offices as members of IBCA, 22 knowledge partners, adding up to 228 members. Speaking for the last 2 years, that this committee has worked with the management team at IBCA. We have built a very vibrant, highly collaborative and participative team within the membership in IBCA. IBCA, after years of hard work, I mean, all the predecessor committees have also done enormous amount of work to bring the issues of this association and the members of this association at the forefront. And we are particularly pleased about the leapfrogging that we have done in the last 2 years as being recognized as a very key enabler to the growth initiatives of the economy, getting the attention of people in New Delhi, including the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, to our industry. And I will talk about it going forward. As an industry, we are committed to delivering at least $50 billion on a per annum basis by 2025 into the domestic corporate industry, including the startups. And we have and will continue to play a very important role with respect to our policy advocacy. Next slide, please. 2021 has been a record year for the industry. We have, as an industry, channelized $77 billion into the Indian ecosystem of corporates, all the way from startups to the entire value chain covering real estate, infrastructure, other venture capital companies, and late-stage private equity investments as well. This is absolutely phenomenal for our industry, which just a few years back was probably 1/10 this size. This also speaks to the importance of this industry again, once again to reiterate, in the growth of this economy and in the job creation, attendant wealth creation, and keeping the virtuous cycle of the economy going. I would say that creating 46 unicorns in India is something to be really proud of. And India has also emerged as the third largest ecosystem for startups, overtaking UK. Many of us who are members, who are probably listening into this conference, know that even a decade back, a startup was considered very risky. Not only finding capital was difficult, finding talent was even more difficult. Listening to their woes and enabling them was almost impossible. Indeed, our country and the efforts of this association through appropriate contribution of all the members of this association have made this monumental difference in bringing startup at the center stage of economic growth and wealth creation. And this is something that this industry can be truly proud of. Next slide, please. Also, it's very, very important to note that IPOs have generated a $5.1 billion worth of exits. And many of us know that is there enough exit opportunity from India has been a very big deterrent for at least the global investors. And India has broken all records in terms of providing exits either through PE to PE exits or IPO exits or sale to strategic players. In the last 2 years, IBCA, through its various councils, have addressed the entire spectrum of issues for our industry. The LP Council had targeted that we would do an international LP summit where we would get the attention of the entire world to the prospects of investing in India. We had a very successful conference titled Maximum India Conclave, and this was participated by 180 global LPs. Indeed, a very, very successful 3-day event, which was put together by the association with the help of all its members. We have made progress in a number of councils. I'll keep it brief. We had a council from the elected members of IBCA for credit and special situations, and we have really got the attention of SEBI to deal with this asset class as a separate asset class. And today, SSF funds can be part of AIF Category 1, and there are many more changes that we are pushing forward with. The Venture Capital Council had a very, very active 2 years. We had several roundtables. We got the attention of all the departments of under Ministry of Finance. We had a global summit, and there was extensive participation in our Honorable Prime Minister's Startup India International Summit by many members of our venture capital members in IBCA. We have had several virtual roundtables. We have had the attention of our finance minister as well, participating and speaking in these conferences, which were meant to attract capital from around the world for our venture capital investments. We have made progress with our CAT 3 Council, and there are several facilitating guidelines through our continuous effort of sharing our problems with SEBI that has been enabled. And as I said, we are not at the destination with respect to any of these councils. It's a journey. But what we are very proud and happy to share is that we have seen several milestones being crossed in the last 2 years because of the attention that we have received from the powers that be, which is helping our industry walk towards greater progress, greater amount of capital, and doing the right things by our business and not be constrained by certain regulatory shortcomings. The Real Estate Council, again, conducted 3 sessions, and they have also taken up their issues with SEBI and other authorities. We have had the Infrastructure Council present a white paper on asset monetization. They are also coming up with a paper on renewables. We have had the Regulatory Affairs Committee again play very critical role in bringing all the regulatory issues to the attention of New Delhi. They played a very critical role in the pre-budget submissions, which has really got the attention of the government. And I will talk about some of the things that were spoken about in the budget session. And we had the Global Investor Council talk about listing of unlisted companies directly on the international exchange.
Good evening. Uh, I'm delighted now to start our next session. The next speaker is a very important and well-known face to the various stakeholders of the venture capital and private equity ecosystem. He is also a great proponent of innovation, of building a future-ready India, and of increasing the ease of doing business in India. I'm delighted to welcome the Honorable Commerce and Industry Minister, Shri Piyush Goyal. He's also the Minister for Consumer Affairs and Food and Public Distribution and Textiles. Adding to his rich administrative experience, he's held various other ministerial and important positions in the past. We wish to thank the Minister and the industry for actively engaging and extending support to the venture and growth ecosystem and for being such a listening government. There are various important initiatives that have been taken by the government. The first was the Global VC Summit, which started off in Goa. This was in the period when I was the chair for IBCA. I was fortunate to have seen that. And then it continued in virtual format during the COVID period. A very important other new initiative is the National Startup Advisory Council, which has been active for about a year already. But I will not take up more valuable time listing the minister's various other contributions. And without much ado, we will just rejig the format slightly. The minister was caught up in an important meeting and is on the way back to office. So we'll start off with the Q&A. And then once he is in office on video, he can continue with the keynote address. Honorable Minister, as I said, thank you so much for some of these very important initiatives, the Global VC Summit, the National Startup Advisory Council, various other measures for improving the regulatory ease of investing in innovative businesses in India, which is so important for the growth of the economy. So your vision for Startup India has helped make India number 3 in startups, number 3 in unicorns globally. The question is, I think we've seen lots of innovative businesses serving the needs of Indians, of middle India, of rural India. And these businesses have obviously helped catalyze growth. In the next stage of evolution, how do you see sort of deeper technology innovation, even more innovation coming from India on the path to leapfrogging India to its 100 years as independent country in the next orbit? Minister, what's the next stage going from number 3 in startups and unicorns, and what do you think can catalyze that?
Thank you very much, Padmanabh ji. My apologies for having got delayed, but today has been a very hectic day. And we also have the children from Sumi on the way back to the borders and getting out of Ukraine today, which is the last batch of kids. We have the election results tomorrow. It's a very, very tough time right now with too many contra requirements. But thank you for giving me this opportunity to interact with your colleagues with the venture capital industry, and delighted to be a part of your program. Incidentally, I think there was a time when this ecosystem was still taking roots, when we had to worry about what next. I think now we have reached a situation of how to catch up with the speed with which the entire story is unfurling. Today, you catch them young. I had the distinct pleasure and an opportunity to interact with some children who are, in many cases, school-going kids, mostly girls, if I remember correctly, who have come up with some brilliant ideas. And I think the understanding amongst our young boys and girls that we don't want to be just a job seeker, we want to actually become a job creator, and we want to contribute to a better world, a better future for the entire humanity, is now seeping into our children. Gone are the days when you and I as parents could force our children to join an engineering college and become a idiot like we saw in the Three Idiots. These days, kids have a mind of their own. Some of them have really different paths that they choose and excel in. So I personally believe that the entire thinking in the country is gradually moving towards exploring the new world, exploring new ideas, tinkering with new ways of doing the same thing better. So take the example of the Atal Tinkering Labs. At a very young age, they started imbibing the spirit of inquiry amongst our young boys and girls. So to my mind, the whole ecosystem now is going to take growth by leaps and bounds. We'll have newer and newer ideas. You'll soon have ideas choosing what fund to take. We have it already in some cases where they are shopping, which is the fund they want to associate with their ideas. And I'm quite sure we'll see more and more of that. I do hope we don't rest on our laurels of 90 plus unicorns or 10 unicorns in calendar 22 already. We don't get the satisfaction of being the third largest startup ecosystem, but encourage more and more youngsters, more and more people with new ideas to explore the unknown. And I'm very confident that this is the way to go. The next 25 years of our Amrit Kal will be full of new ideas, new innovation, research, and understanding of how we can do things better. Huge amount of fintech, edtech, uh, health tech. A lot of new things are going to prevail and change the way we live. Thank you.
Thank you so much, great that on a day where you're helping pull out the last remaining Indian students in Ukraine, you found time to still catch up with us. Thank you, and fully agree with you that I think we should not be resting a lot on our laurels, and really the next 25 years of Amrit Kal should be the next sort of wave. As you correctly said, I think entrepreneurism and innovation, the desire is deep rooted now in India's young people. It's clearly become an aspiration. I guess we now need the right sort of support from all stakeholders, including the government, to really truly support this innovation and risk taking, because some of the elements you mentioned, like for instance, you take an area like space tech. It's a new level of risk that entrepreneurs and investors need to take, and we really look forward to the right sort of framework that the government can provide. And given the past track record, I'm sure that that will be coming as well. The other question, Minister, was on this National Startup Advisory Council that you have constituted and you chair. And I think it's completed a little over a year. You have been closely interacting with entrepreneurs and investors over the year as you've been chairing these meetings. Are there any sort of key sort of learnings you have from these discussions in terms of what can, again, help sort of unlock the next wave of opportunities? And for us as investors, I mean, how do we really encourage these risk-taking entrepreneurs in the best possible way? Obviously, on a sustainable way, as and finally, we need to make good risk-adjusted returns for our own investors to keep coming back and grow the pile of capital that is available for such innovation in India.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. I think what's important and what I see as some of the most important outcomes of the Startup Advisory Council have been the fact that we all recognize that there's a large pool of talent in the interiors of India in areas which are hitherto not exposed to the new ways in which financing is available or in which new ideas can be encouraged. And if all of us, particularly those from the cities, metropolitan cities, or from the India's Silicon Valley in Bengaluru, or Gurugram, Noida, Delhi region, Pune, Mumbai region, if all of us were to be willing to sacrifice a little bit of time and effort, if venture capital funds would take a little more effort to reach out to tier 3, tier 4 towns and cities, I think there's a lot of opportunity awaiting us across India. I have seen that some of the children from these smaller places, with their very, let's say, elementary thinking, also come up with brilliant ideas. And I wish all of us would dedicate some amount of time or effort to help spread the possibilities that the new ecosystem holds. We could be mentors. We could actually handhold some of these young boys and girls. We could provide this initial seed funding, which in these small places is also very small. And my own sense is domestic capital will have to increasingly play an important role to make this happen. And I know that some of you all are doing wonderful work in this direction, but more and more I interact with our young startups. I get the sense that that's where, if we all were to focus, we could actually see some transformational journeys coming out of India. I mean, for that matter, even amongst our current unicorns, there are some companies which are promoted by entrepreneurs who come from very remote areas of Odisha or the interior parts of the country. I mean, in a way, if you go to see, there are some entrepreneurs in business or manufacturing who may not fall in the same category of the startups as we understand them today, with a lot of technology based ideas. But a lot of our entrepreneurs in India, the big business houses also, have their roots in very rural areas, small towns, small businesses, starting off as a small scale unit or a tiny unit. But with their grit and determination, they've made it really big on the international scene. Similarly, on the startup ecosystem also, I personally believe there's huge untapped potential, which we should all put in our best effort to reach out to. Thank you.
Wonderful. You, I think, hit the nail on the head, Honorable Minister, when you said that domestic capital has a very important role to play, particularly as you spawn out beyond the metropolises and tier 1 cities and for the next wave of innovation. And it also provides sort of sticky capital to add on to the sometimes volatile international flows that can be there. And that is clearly an identified area which will really help this ecosystem become more stable, more robust, and grow in size. Any thoughts from you on how that? Obviously, it is a gradual process and some of that has already, from a regulatory perspective, has already been underway. Whereas in practice, I guess the amounts will increase over a period of time. But any perspectives from you, Honorable Minister, on how we can help channelize that domestic capital into innovation, into startups, into venture a little faster over the years to come?
I think one important element in this will be the outreach program. We'll have to probably engage with the incubators that are being set up all across the country. If I remember correctly, we've recently come up with a scheme to support the incubators which are set up in different parts of the country with some initial pool of capital. I think if the domestic venture capital industry could literally adopt, or at least some of you could adopt some of these incubators and reach out and give confidence to our new startups in remoter areas of India, that can make a lot of difference. Many of them they're not aware of what are the possibilities. They're not aware of the fact that government or the private sector is willing to give them a chance, willing to put money on the table to encourage and support them, willing to handhold them, willing to uh, help fine tune their initial ideas with support of technology or better understanding of how the system works. For example, an entrepreneur may have a very good idea, but he may not really be able to understand how to convert that idea using technology, the newer ways of working like blockchain or big data, or really what would be the pathway to making that idea or implementing that idea on the ground. So the awareness programs about the possibilities that are available and a collective effort to actually put money on the table and not squeeze them out of their ideas. Sadly, I find that very often at a nascent stage, many good ideas have got sold very cheap. They've been they've already almost been taken over with a very small ticket check for lack of alternatives by one or the other investor. I personally believe that we must also seriously look at some kind of a clawback or some kind of instruments and a little more understanding on our part. And with that, by understanding, I mean a little more compassion towards the persons who come up with the ideas to see how they can get a better deal. Thanks.
So that's a good way of looking at it. A little bit of compassionate capitalism would help. I don't know if you've reached wonderful. So I thought I'll just wrap up with one last quick question before handing over to you for your keynotes. In terms of ease of doing business, particularly when businesses are being run ethically, backed by institutional capital, well-run businesses, you've been a big proponent of, and you have taken lots of steps in reducing the red tape or requirements for running businesses easily. Any sort of plans there? Because institutionally, venture-backed entrepreneurs and companies really thrive in that environment where the ease of doing business is much higher, and they can focus on really innovation and the businesses rather than regulatory requirements, which can sometimes be overhead.
Mr. Sinha, I think that's something I've been repeatedly appealing to all of industry, that on our part, we have a certain understanding and we'll try to do our best in reducing the compliance burden or regulatory burden, move towards single window, move towards self-regulation, self-certification. But this can best be done collectively. I think industry and businesses will have to become demanders of how we can make compliance easier, reduce the burden of regulatory requirements, make your life and your businesses easier. So this will be something where I would, on the contrary, appeal to all of you to help us in understanding what are your practical day-to-day problems. Very often you will know what is the solution also. And we on our part have to take a view that probably just because we had a few occasions which were not, or few instances where irregularities came before us, it should not deter us from taking bold decisions for ease of doing business. So my approach is that whatever strict regulations we bring in, there will be a few cases which may be irregular, but that should not really paint the entire industry of business black. So I believe my Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi is himself very focused on ease of doing business. You know, over the last 7-8 years, how he has relentlessly worked on this agenda. He's spoken on more than one occasion about reducing compliance burden, and we are tasked with that, all of us. So we'll be delighted to hear from you. What are the regulatory overreach or problems that we can help uh, unburden you from?
Thank you so much for all your answers and for being so open and accessible for such things. So with that, Honorable Minister, I'll hand over to you for your few keynote thoughts, where you, of course, answered several of our questions, which the audience is really looking forward to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. I also see Rajat on the call. And thank you very much to IVCA for organizing this conclave 2022. It's very important that we keep this dialogue within the industry and with policymakers going so that we can continuously evolve. The whole startup world is about newer and newer ideas and newer ways to do things. So the same would apply to me and to policy making also. So in that sense, I think these conclaves that you have had since your inception have been truly a driving force in helping encourage private equity and venture capital industry in India. I'm sure this event, which is a manthan of sorts, a lot of ideas will flow in. You'll be exploring business opportunities. You'll be assessing the regulatory scenario about which you just spoke about. I'm sure you'll come up with a position paper or ideas at the end of the conclave, which you will share with us and which will help us in working towards a more benign or more user-friendly regime for venture capital and private equity. The pivotal role you have played in the growth of the startup ecosystem, in the economic growth of the nation as a whole, and to drive innovation and bring new ideas to the fore are quite legendary. And I'd like to thank all your members for your contribution to our nation. Today, as we talk about an Atmanirbhar Bharat, a self-reliant India, and when we are working towards creating a blueprint for the next 25 years, what we call the Amrit Kal, as we move towards the 100 years of India's independence, 2047, India 2047. I think the new ventures about which we just discussed will need funding. They'll need support during the initial phases. We will need the venture capitalists to support these startups to kind of take off, mentor, handhold, and your organization can act as the golden bridge between the government, startups, the market, consumers, and effectively promote innovation in different spheres. Well, as you rightly pointed out, India has created a niche for itself in the startup map of the world. The Prime Minister launched this movement, I think, about 6 years ago, January 16th, 2016, probably, or thereabouts. And ever since, we've seen the entrepreneurial spirit of young India at its very best all across India. We have over 60,000 startups. And today, I see the startups as the DNA of the future of India. In fact, before this, I had a program and I got delayed in the traffic coming back, in which the Municipal Corporation of Delhi has upgraded a school in which they've also provided facilities for the children to think innovatively and differently. And one of the facilities they provided is a toy bank. Now, toys play a very important role in the initial phases of a child's development: mental, physical, emotional development, psychological development. Now, in a way, if you ask me, that's where the startup story begins. How are we going to get our children at a very nascent age, literally in kindergarten, also have this spirit of inquiry I talked about earlier? And in fact, in my speech there also I spoke about this, that the teachers and the school need to focus on this budding entrepreneurial spirit in these kids. Don't make them job seekers, make them job creators. And I personally think that's the new India that we're all looking up to, looking forward to. As it is said, if somebody offers you an amazing opportunity, but you're not sure you can do it, then it's best to say yes and then learn to do it later. That never say no spirit is what we want to kind of introduce and promote in the country. Well, for the industry or for the startups, I can only say that give these venture capitalists an idea that they cannot refuse. In the words of Godfather, Don Corleone. And I'm sure our angel investors, our venture capitalists will also look at these new ideas with that same spirit, that if I lose this opportunity, somebody else is going to grab it and make money out of it. You will, of course, play a very defining role in the years to come if we want to promote this whole ecosystem. Your role as angel financiers, venture capitalists, seed capital providers is going to be extremely important. And I really wish all of you the very, very best in your work. The world is changing fast. Today, a middle class family literally earns money running a bed and breakfast after registering on a startup, or a small restaurant owner is expanding his business rapidly through another startup. A panwala is accepting digital payments through a third startup. And I won't be surprised, since I'm talking of a panwala, if he puts up a CCTV camera with facial recognition on it, and as the customer is walking towards the store, or maybe I can go one step further, and there is a panwala like that in Mumbai, where as soon as the car is parked near the shop and he looks up and he sees your car, he knows who's coming in, he knows the kind of pan he's going to order, and he's already preparing the pan. I don't know if that could be a startup idea for somebody. But, well, when we are also talking of pan, I do hope कि कोई हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स को चूना ना लगाए. Because we want all of you also to succeed, to grow with us, to not look at supernatural profits, but look at more reasonable returns on your investment. And the best way is if you get a good return on more and more of your investments, then I think you will also look for more reasonable returns. So I really pray and wish that you continue to contribute. I remember the Prime Minister had once said that the current decade is going to be the decade of India. TECH, the decade of India. And this will be a decade where technology and innovation will drive the future of Indian economy. whether it is UPI or CoWIN. Today we are showing to the whole world what Indian capabilities are and how we can leverage digital platforms for mass transformation of the lives of 1 billion+ people. I look forward to also your support and ideas on how we can reduce our compliance burden for industry and for your industry. I hope the PLI schemes will also open opportunities for new businesses and entrepreneurs. PM Gati Shakti. And I would wish, if you have time during your conclave, to that you invite somebody either from my ministry or the director of BISAG who prepared PM Gati Shakti to give you a flavor of what it is. It's truly transformational. I mean, if a startup had come up with this idea, he could have been a billionaire today. This idea came from the Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, who does not seek to be a billionaire but wants to make all of our young startups billionaires. But he's been focused on this for a long time. I promise you, it's a simple technology based solution. How we can plan better, how we can implement better, how we can monitor better, how we can cut down the time and cost overruns on our infrastructure projects, how we can locate our industries and ideas at the right location. It has transformational dimension. And if you have the opportunity, I would urge all of you to understand PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan. You'll really find it very, very interesting. We are also promoting, as I said earlier, innovation labs at the school level. We have now over 9,000 Atal Tinkering Labs, giving students a chance to innovate in school at a young age. We also are now reaching the 400 club. Both our cricketer Ashwin is soon going to have 400 test cricket wickets through his bowling. He's on the cusp of entering the 400 club, and we as a nation are on the cusp of reaching our target of a $400 billion of merchandise goods export, a never before feat for the country. We also don't want to rest on our laurels and want to go rapidly to first get into the league of the late Shane Warne, somebody we've all watched all through our younger days. He was in the 700 plus club. Muralitharan was in the 800 plus club. Similarly, our exports should see that growth in merchandise and services. And I pray and wish that our startups contribute significantly as we move towards $1 trillion of exports to begin with, and then $1 trillion of merchandise exports and $1 trillion of services exports. That is $2 trillion of exports that I believe should be the first target that we as a nation should acknowledge and accept. The Prime Minister had interacted with over 150 startups on 16 January earlier this year, and he has also announced that this will now be celebrated as the National Startup Day, taking the startup culture and the ecosystem to far-flung areas of the country. I'd like to suggest a four-pronged focus from your industry. One, I would urge investors and capital providers to focus on 4 F's: fostering innovation and future technologies. 2, facilitate mobilization of domestic capital, about which I just spoke in detail. 3, fast-tracking self-reliance and Atmanirbhar Bharat, the vision of picking up new ideas, new products that we can make in India efficiently and competitively. 4, focus on tier 2, 3, 4 cities and towns to take this to more remote areas. And this four-pronged action plan can truly serve the country in the days and years to come. In conclusion, as Swami Vivekananda had said, all power is within you. You can do anything and everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, it'll be our collective effort, Sabka Prayas, that will truly take India forward and reinforce our position as a global player. Thank you very much. I wish all of you success in your business. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, and that was a very inspirational speech, and I think you're not only inspired, but as I mentioned previously, you've always been open to listening, engaging. Thank you for your multiple offers. The session on Gati Shakti, which we'll definitely take up. On any suggestions from the broader ecosystem on reducing friction in a pragmatic way. I think, and the 4Fs you spoke about, I think they all make sense on fostering innovation, of course, and deep tech, which is an area where we can do more. Domestic capital, of course, is a very important role, including pension fund capital flowing in India. But also, I think you touched upon the important bit of self-reliance, Atmanirbhar Bharat, including on manufacturing when you spoke about merchandise goods. I think we also need to see a lot of innovation on the manufacturing side in the next wave for India. So all very good thoughts that you left with us. Very inspirational and great to see that you're fostering entrepreneurism right from early days of school. I think so many, apart from the Atal Labs, your talks to school students, I think it'll just help build up the culture. So with that, I hand over to Rajat for any further sort of comments that we may have. But thank you so much for your talk and for your time.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time.